Hello out there in the YouTubeverse, it is Max and I am back at you with more content here at Superliminal Games. Thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Today, we are going to do what they call mixed up sealed. Now, the crux of this video is I'm going to teach you how to maneuver through what they call chaos format. So, the idea of chaos format is you have a bunch of different sets that all are not related in any way. And it's your job to build a deck out of them. In this particular case, we're going to be doing a sealed. In some cases, you may be drafting this kind of a thing. Now, I am very familiar with both draft and sealed when it comes to chaos. So, I've been doing this for a super long time. I'm actually pretty good at this event a lot of the time, so it doesn't have to necessarily be this mixed up event. I want to apply this to just the general concept of chaos formatted things, be it draft, sealed, etc., no matter what the packs are. You get sometimes at your LGS, they'll be like, oh, we got a bunch of old packs in, so we're going to do this cool chaos event for a bunch of people, or maybe there's some sets that are a little older that they want to push off the shelves and go, hey, we're going to do a neat little chaos event. They are a ton of fun if you can learn to navigate them pretty well. So one of the first things you want to do is really investigate the power of the cards. And you're going to hear me reference that a lot, the power of the card. The reason I keep saying power of the card is because Chaos Draft, you have to focus on card power and principles of good limited play. You are not going to get too far, and this isn't all the time, right? This could end up working your way from synergies. Synergies are very hard to make work because you have a plethora of different sets. So you need to go to principles of limited. So a good example of this would be a flying or evasive archetype. That is more of a chaos format kind of win condition or deck building principle, more so than something that would be like green-white tokens or green-white counters. That kind of a thing isn't necessarily going to get you there if you're relying on the synergy. And the reason is because you may have a couple cards that are very powerful, but likely they're not going to be powerful enough to push you over the top. You're going to need them in concert with other cards to create the synergy, and the odds of you finding these few cards in a 40-card deck are actually pretty darn low. So, what we're going to try to do is focus on power. And when I say that, we see him sitting here, and I know what you're saying is, you're already 3 minutes into the video, why the hell haven't you said Teferi yet? Okay, well there is a Teferi here. I usually start looking at my colors and I investigate them. If you're doing this in paper, you want to lay them all out in piles so you can see what are your good cards. Now, it looks like our blue is actually relatively deep, which is very good news because, again, we want to play this Teferi. So our white looks a little shallow comparatively. Our black looks kind of medium, but decent. There's some decent disruption here. I like seeing this Whisper Agent because that is kind of a hidden blue card for us. But I see a Virus Beetle, I see a Midnight Ambush, I see a Lich's Caress, I see some powerful cards, Ogotten Inheritance. Our red looks quite shallow and quite weak overall. I do see a Teach by Example, which again, secret blue card. Reduce, really not exactly what we're looking to play, but again, this could be a blue card. But this looks very weak. We have no game-winning cards in this. It's all just little reactive spells, and a lot of them aren't very good. A couple low-end burn spells. I do see a Igneous Inspiration, which is probably the strongest card, full stop, that we have. I like Enigma Drake, but I don't think we're going to get there on a blue-red. That's a good example of an archetype that probably won't work. Our green looks relatively deep as well. I like the look of the green a lot. It looks like our more powerful cards, though, are kind of missing. Like I see a Vorst Claw, I see a Herd Gorger, all of which are double green, and I'm really hoping to be blue-white. So that's going to be tricky. Like we can see here, Edgewall Innkeeper, Garenbrig Squire, all have adventure synergies, and we're not going to open too many adventure cards, so it's not really worth it. I do see a blue-green piece of fixing, so maybe we could splash something. I really don't know as though we're going to go for the frog, but it's possible. And we are playing sealed, so it is worth noting this is going to be a little bit of a longer, grindier affair than it would be if this were a draft. Sealed's going to take time. There's another good synergy, Pirate's Cutlass. This card was amazing in set. Not so good here because the odds of us playing Pirates are going to be like, we might get 1 or 2. And it's not worth playing what is otherwise a mediocre equipment if you're not in the dedicated archetype. So, didn't mean to do that. Let's take a look at our gold cards here. Like, I want to see what I compare with my blue. Like, that is neat. We have a Fractal Summoning in case we could play a Learn card. So I like seeing that there. Our mana fixing is a little soft, especially if we want to go blue-white. And that's okay. It doesn't mean we're not going to play it. We don't need to have the fixing. So I do want to start my most declarative strong card here. Maul of the Skyclaves is excellent. This is a very strong card. I don't think we're going to probably end up playing a Tragic Poet. Disenchant seems a little bit too narrow for us. I don't think we necessarily want a Divine Smite. Flare of Faith is a fine enough trick, but not like an amazing trick. Humans have become a very common creature type, so it's not like we'd be stuck in one set if we were trying to do that. So that's not too big of a deal. I see Danitha, who's very good. I see the Sky Marcher, which is quite good. Double Pips, though, worth noting there. Starnheim Courser might pay off for us really nicely. Glorifier of Dusk is quite nice. So a lot of double pip in white is a little scary. So I want to start to put down what I think will be playable for us. And a lot of the evasive higher end. And you can see our curve is enormous, right? We're at 3 and 5 drops coming out of white. That's about it. Spontaneous Flight is not exactly a trick I want to play if I can help it. I don't think I'm on Potion of Healing. I don't necessarily care about gaining life too much. Sentinel's Mark was decent, and it is kind of decent. The flash on it is effective. It stays on the creature, so it can be a trick and a way to keep the creature buffed. So this one I'm kind of interested in. I'll put it down. If I need to cut it, I need to cut it. We're not going to play Tajik, unfortunately. Moving into blue, I see an Otherworldly Gaze, which I don't know if we're going to necessarily go down that road. I see a Whispering Wizard down here, which is pretty good, depending on how many non-creature spells we end up playing. Aether Theorist isn't a bad early game play. Arcane Subtraction's quite nice, considering we do have that Fractal Summoning we can play. So I am pretty interested in the 2 drops here. Renowned Weaponsmith is not going to get there. Again, this is calling out specifically named cards from a set, so it's really not good for us. Cloud Concealer, on the other hand, is quite good. Moon Snare Specialist is excellent. Whisper Agent is quite good. I do like a lot of what's going on in blue for us. I don't know if we're going to get to enough cards, so I'm interested to see what we can cobble together. I'd be willing to play Familiar. I don't love it. I'm going to try to avoid having Quench in the deck, but if I need a playable, I will play it. Unexplained Disappearance is fine. Cloud Concealer is fine. Crashing Tide, yeah, it's medium playable. But I don't really know if we want a Glacial Grasp in this. Discontinuity. Just end the turn. As long as it's your turn, it costs 4. So we could play this if we really wanted to. I don't know as though that's a direction we want to go in. Proliferate doesn't do a whole lot for us. Obviously works nicely with Teferi, but, you know, what doesn't? I don't think we need to put this in our board here. I do see the Thornwood Falls. It's very tempting, so we can help play that. Teach by Example is interesting. I don't think we have enough non-creatures at this juncture. Yeah, non-creatures is only 5. I really don't think we're going to get there on something like that. Even if we played... Like, Resculpt is okay. Like, it's fine. You could use it on one of your creatures if you needed to defensively. I like the Whispering Wizard a lot. I think it's very good. I just don't know if we're going to be able to take advantage of it, is my concern. Crashing Tide isn't bad. We don't have any Merfolk. That is accurate. We don't have a single Merfolk. We could play Quench. I'm not in love with it. Otherworldly Gaze is not terrible. It's a playable. It's an instant. We could use it. We could play Glacial Grasp. The problem is, look at our 3s, right? Like this is what I'm talking about when I mention the principles of deck building. Our 3s are glutted. We just have a ton of them. Like even Moonsnare, Ninjutsu's on 3. So I am very interested in cheap creatures at this point. That is by far what I'm interested in. We could play wall because the power level of our cards is so high, and we're worried about our late game being the way to go. So we could play a Partick Wanderer as an additional big creature. We don't have a big beefer, so I'm not opposed to it. I'm not opposed to wall. Puppet really doesn't do much for us. Again, it works well with Teferi. That's cool, but doesn't really do much otherwise. Now, we can look at dipping into a third color. That is an option. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of doing this if we can help it, but if we can't, like right now, we're 6 cards shy of a playable deck. So if we go back to our white and reinvestigate, we really don't have a lot here that's going on that's very good. Like, it's all fairly soft options. If we go back to our blue, it gets a little bit better, and there are certainly some things we're not playing we could be playing. Otherworldly Gaze, Quench, that would probably be close to enough. We could play either Tide or Grasp to put in the Whispering Wizard and kind of hold there. That might be the safest option. We could also play the 5/6 if we wanted to, in concert with the Partick Wanderer, because we might just need the top end. So let's see what this looks like. I think personally it's going to be, we could also resculpt if we really need to. This would be a 40 card deck, right? It's not bad. It's heavy on 3s, but it's not horrendous, right? Like, this isn't a disaster by any stretch. It's quite good. We're not screwing up our mana situation much. So this is a totally acceptable way to build this. I think it is worth investigating to see if, because we do have that piece of green-blue fixing, if we can play anything in green. Like, we could drop Narnam Cobra in the deck. It's kind of a forgettable Death Toucher, but it's not terrible. I just don't know if there's anything in here we really want. The Dawnheart Rejuvenator is not bad. It's a beefer that can fix 4 colors, but it doesn't really fix quickly. And it's just like a generic 2/4. Like, it's not a great body in terms of stats. We're not playing in the graveyard, so I don't really like the Millipede very much. We're not proliferating too much, so the Druid doesn't really, like, make me go, ooh. There's a Merfolk we could play, but then we want to play that on curve, and we're not really looking to do that in green. I think we'd be most interested in either the Biomathematician. It creates a 0/0 fractal, and you get to put a 1/1 counter on each fractal you control, so it's a 2/2 and a 1/1 for 3 mana, which isn't a bad rate. And then, of course, we have the Frog. Whenever a Frog you control attacks, mill 3. Whenever a permanent card's put into your graveyard from the library, exile it with a Croak counter on it. You may play lands and cast spells from among cards you exile with Croak counters on them. The negative with the Frog is it does have to be able to attack. So that is a downside for the Frog. So that's what we're looking at right now in terms of possibly filling in a spot, right? Like, I could drop something like a Glacial Grasp or a Crashing Tide, because we're not really a tempo deck, right? We're not looking to get down early and kind of beat down. So something like Glacial Grasp looks extremely shabby in this kind of a deck to me. I don't think we're trying to do that. We are trying to buy time, so you can argue, hey, it taps. But that is kind of the worst case scenario in a use for this particular card. So we could drop this and put in the Biomathematician. The negative is it's really not lighting the world on fire in that regard. So I do want to look at black as well, because we do have a piece of black-white fixing that we can use to try to play black. And black is a lot more of a splashable color in general, because a lot of what you splash black for is removal. And that's really something you don't have to cast early, so you have time to try to find your mana sources. Again, this is kind of, we're raw dogging it a little bit, right? Like, we'd have one piece of fixing. We have no way to hunt up the other black, so we'd probably be playing a basic Swamp and our Scoured Barrens minimally. If we wanted to play something like Olivia's Midnight Ambush, which isn't that good of a piece of removal. We have 2 Vicious Offerings, so there's a lot of cheap removal for early beats, which is nice. But again, we're not going to be casting this removal very quickly. And the other negative is our big piece of unconditional removal in black is Lich's Caress, which is a double black card. So I'm not really super interested in that either. I don't think that these green-black cards are strong enough in concert. If our black was deeper, I'd say, yeah, maybe we have a shot. But I don't think we can cobble together a green-black deck that would even be like, okay, maybe we like really go nuts and we try to splash Teferi or something over a long game. I don't necessarily think black and green hold up enough to do that. We don't have a lot of cards that stay alive. We have a lot of cheap little tiny Death Touchers and things. Like, not really doing it for us so much. So let's just take one moment to investigate our red. It's kind of our last shot. We have Teach by Example still sitting there, so we don't like the Glacial Grasp. We can Teach by Example. We have 9 non-creatures now. We'd keep that count the same by dropping the Glacial Grasp and putting in the Teach. The Teach, we really want to see what does it work well with, right? Like, what does it do? Because remember, some of our non-creatures are equipment, things like that. Works well with the Crashing Tide. We could bounce 2 creatures. Same with the Unexplained Disappearance. Resculpt, we could exile 2 creatures. Arcane Subtraction, we could shrink 2 creatures. It's not really super effective. It doesn't do a whole... There's no super powerful card. We could play the Discontinuity if we want a very expensive card that does something interesting. Could save... I mean, best case scenario for this card, right, is that they're going to go, I win this turn, and you go, your turn's over, my turn. And then you might be able to pull out a win. A lot of times you're just going to be drawing a card with it, so it's going to read 3 and 3 blue, draw a card. And I don't think I want to pay that much to draw a card in the grand scheme of things. Again, I think our red is not great. I think the Igneous Inspiration is our best card. We only have 1 lesson with the Fractal. So I don't necessarily think we want to go down that road of splashing this, especially because we have 0 fixing for red. If we're going to use the wall to mill, it could mill through finding the red source. I just think there's so much that could go wrong by splashing here. It just feels greedy to me with the lack of fixing we have. So I think this is going to be the build for the deck. So next step is we're going to get started with games. All right, we're back with game 1 with this Chaos sealed deck. We are on the play. This handle looks fine. We got lands, we got spells. We gonna do it. Opponent leads on Forest. We draw another Plains, which is probably one of the weaker draws in the deck, honestly. We'll pass the turn. No need to mill ourselves. I don't know as though we'll ever activate this wall, or at least without some kind of a weird caveat. Play Danitha out on 3. No need to hold the Whisper Agent up yet. They do have the Fetid Imp, and the Danitha lines up much better against the Fetid Imp. Let's see what the opponent's follow-up is. The attack with the Imp, I imagine they have a follow-up here. Just a Vicious Offering, no big deal. Little Dominaria block. Actually, alright, Plains definitely still one of the worst draws in the deck. I don't see any need to Crashing Tide here, just like draw a card. We'll just pass. We can Whisper Agent in a turn. Opponent's not presenting very much in the way of pressure, so this bluffs a counter spell. I like that. Grizzly Ghoul, 4/3 trample, enters the battlefield 1/1. Sure. 4/3. We'll play out 3/2. Whispering Wizard. I want to say that's good enough. Yeah, I think with Crashing Tide in hand, that's probably good enough. We'll just play out the Wizard here. Nothing fancy. We're not going to attack to disincentivize the Ghoul attacking. We can block with the wall if we want to preserve our life total. I don't think we're super duper worried about that quite yet. Green Desert, just the Cycling Desert. Leads me to believe opponent's low on land in hand. Okay, opponent lots of removal here. Disincentivizes us to block the Grizzly Ghoul now. No need to bounce it back to hand. It's really not going to do much. No surprise here that they're just going to get a quick scry. Odds are they don't have another Ventured card. It's possible. It's fully possible, but odds seem low on that. The fact that they did all that first main phase, yeah, it leads me to believe. Interesting they did not attack with the Fetid Imp there. That's definitely interesting. Okay, this is pretty good here. Let's go ahead and Cloud Conceer. Nice. Question is, do we want to bounce something? I think the answer is probably not. With the Dream Breaker coming, or Dam Breaker, excuse me, Dream Breaker. It's much more intimidating. With the Dam Breaker potential here to, again, we want to tie up the board. We're not necessarily the beatdown. We're looking to survive long enough to play our very powerful cards like Teferi. Okay. Gives us something to do with the Crashing Tide as the game progresses here. There's Teferi. I think we're going to play out Teferi. So, all right. Let's talk a minute about Teferi. So here's what's going to happen. We're going to play out Teferi. They are immediately going to attack all at Teferi. So we need to be aware of that. So then that begs the question of what is our best line from here? And I think the answer is probably bouncing either the Ghoul or the Wrangler. But then that leaves us open to Fetid Imp could, if they deal with the Cloud Concealer, it comes in. So I think we want to pump Teferi. The problem is we don't have a Merfolk, so maybe we play out the Dam Breaker first to give ourselves a buffer to keep Teferi alive. Do we want to offer a trade of any kind? I think the answer is maybe. Let's see if they want to trade flyers. I don't mind if they crack back with the Fetid Imp. I don't mind trading off for the Fetid Imp because it does gain Death Touch, so it actually has more value than our Cloud Concealer, despite the stats being a little bit higher for our Cloud Concealer. The Fetid Imp having Death Touch is quite valuable to the opponent. Okay. So now we're getting somewhere. We have a token we can bounce. 5/4 can't get past 5/6. So again, the hindering factor here is going to be mana. So we can Crashing Tide to draw a card. I think it's getting to be where it's in our best interest to Teferi. The opponent still has 2 cards in hand. I don't love Teferiing without an instant, but I think we do want Teferi here. I think we'll just keep him as loyal as possible with this first activation. Plains was a nice draw. Again, we're not going to attack here. We'll untap 2 land. We'll very specifically untap a blue. Now Teferi is going to create the opponent to want to attack. They are 1 mana away from Shadow Beast sighting Flashback, which would make their Grizzly Ghoul a 6/5, which would make it trade with the Dam Breaker, which again is a trade I'm kind of fine with. We could also just chump with the Excavated Wall. So it's really kind of up in the air depending on what opponent does here. Opponent does have Trample here. They're going to out-muscle. Sure. Is that a fight or a bully? That is a bully. Okay. They're going to hup it to Teferi. A little surprised to see the 7/1 Trampler not getting in here. I know we can trade it off, but right now our blocks are actually really kind of pretty simple. Let's go ahead and Otherworldly Gaze. 2/3 flying is nice. These are all kind of nice, actually. Partick Wanderer may not be the best on this board, but it's actually not bad either. I think that's correct. Blockers is fine. Trade off in the air. Question is, do we want to let Teferi take 4? I think the answer is no. Our plan is probably going to be to bounce next turn. So I think we want to get... Do we just let Teferi go to 1 here? I think the answer is no. My turn. Do I want to otherworldly gaze? I think I might want to rearrange those cards, because I think I need to get onto the board faster than them. Faster than the way I'm trying to now. So I think I want to put 1 to the discard here. And I think I want this Sky Marcher on top. Now the question is, do we want to bounce the Ghoul or the 4/4 token? I think the answer is the Ghoul, sadly. Is that correct? We can Teferi bounce too. So I think that's the answer, is going to be bounce the Ghoul. And then Teferi bounce the token. Going to leave the Whisper Agent back to trade with the Karok Wrangler, or present a double block situation if they go for flashback on Shadow Beast sighting. I think that's going to be our best option here. And you can kind of see how much Teferi really just, the whole game becomes about a card that powerful. I'm going to get to play a bigger Ghoul here. That's a good draw. I think we attack here. No, I don't want to attack. Yeah. I don't want the Sky Marcher to die. But I also don't want to leave myself in a position where if the Glorifier dies, Teferi gets attacked. I don't want to block with Sky Marcher if I can help it, because I get value off the white that way. But if I need to in a pinch, I'd rather that be the case. Okay. That's a lot of pests. Let's start with a card. I don't want to just simply bounce Witherbloom. We're not that close to winning the game. Okay, we can play both of these. I'm just debating on what I want to do with my Glorifier here, if I'm interested in trading. Willing to offer a trade here for their Mythic Rare. Doesn't really matter. We have no activated abilities to trigger, and obviously no cards in hand. Looks like they're still digging for something else. I mean, eventually Witherbloom will win them the game. Teferi quite a distance away from being loyal enough to... But right now they have a lack of reach, so we do have some creatures that can smack them pretty quickly. Don't think they can attack here. Okay. Do we want to put... If we put Witherbloom back, Teferi gets attacked with everything, so I think we are in the camp of Teferi's going to keep drawing us cards. Double Plains is about the worst we could have done. Debating on how we want to proceed. Elects to take it here, so it's a tie ball game in terms of life total. Curious to see how attacks look this turn. This is going to be a big question for opponent. Look to all be aimed at me. At least for the moment. Could just be they're looking to gain life, but it seems like kind of a waste of a lot of resources. Maybe they're going to boast the Horizon Seeker. Sure. Maybe they're splashing another color. Yeah, Sultai. Okay. That makes some sense. And they're looking to gain a little bit of life here. A bit of a bold strategy here from the opponent. Okay, big Grizzly Ghoul makes sense. But, I mean, that just gets Teferi'd so easily. I mean, that keeps Teferi from going too crazy. Do we want to draw a card? I think we need to kind of bounce something. We have 13 cards versus our opponent's 19. We bounce Witherbloom and attack with just like Starnheim Courser or the Sky Marcher. We knock him to 11. Then we have to deal with the Ghoul coming in, which kind of gets cleaned up a little bit by like we trade for Partick Wanderer or Glorifier of Dusk. This takes a few turns off the table. We'll see what they do here. It's 5 creatures against 4, but they have to give up a lot. The Grizzly Ghoul is the most potentially hazardous creature here. Oof, that's potentially game-winning card here. We have no good double blocks on the Grizzly Ghoul now. The opponent's deck looks pretty insane. You can see that they're doing, again, the principles of the Chaos Draft. They're playing good cards, and they're trying to... I don't understand the attack. They're all coming at me? Okay, didn't expect that. So we can give up the Glorifier and the Chimera for the Ghoul, and I think that doesn't put us in too terrible a spot. We'll see if opponent has a trick. If opponent has a trick, we're in trouble, obviously. But we can't afford to play around a trick too much. That's interesting they didn't send that. That attack at Teferi is actually like pretty smart tech on their part. So it's really interesting that they elected to not do that. I don't know what we can do from here. We know their next draw is going to be Witherbloom again. The one thing this deck lacks kind of heavily is removal, which is why we went and one of the first things we looked at was black to try to see if we could pair it up with some removal. I do think the deck is lacking in removal. There's the Shadow Beast sighting. They went with lifelink. So opponent valuing the life total is really interesting. Still coming at me. With just the token going at Teferi? We go to 2 here. We would die, right? 369, yeah. So we have to take one block we don't like. Sentinel's Mark. Alright, well this is a pretty easy decision on what to do with Teferi. Moonsnare Specialist is a good draw. I think this is just going to be play this here. That changes the race math quite a bit. Okay. There's Witherbloom, and they're gonna get a pest. Good news is if they pay the 10 life, we win. Nine cards. Resculpt's nice. We unattached because we want to make sure we have the maximum amount of blockers. This is going to be a pretty critical turn here. Obviously, our goal is to let Starnheim Courser plus Armguard Familiar get there, but you can see opponent valuing very heavily trying to kill us, because why not? So we lose to Combat Trick here. But I think that's kind of fine. Okay, we got him. Wow. Didn't expect that, but we managed to pull it out at 1 life and very few cards in deck. Very cool. Back for game 3. 2. That first one felt like a million games in one. Opponent goes first. This hand looks serviceable. It's not great by any stretch, but it's fine. Slow with the Starnheim Courser being our first play, but we knew that when we were looking at the curve of the deck. Again, cannot restate enough when it comes to Chaos Draft that these deck building principles are so important. Back against another black-green deck, which makes sense. This is a very solid deck. It has good removal, so your opponents can't get away with shenanigans. It's got good recursion. It's just very good. Wow, got a power word kill out of their hand, which is quite nice. Still nothing from the opponent. I think we just hold here. Represent counter magic. We have otherworldly gaze. That's, whoa, okay. Yeah, this opponent looks like they're valuing very heavily removal and interaction. Target creature specifically. So I think with 6 land in our hand, we probably do not want that, and the Theorist is not very good against what's going to be removal here. Just pass again, otherworldly gaze up, resculpt if they play something insane. We're just kind of stranding on what looks to be a ton of removal in our opponent's hand. Wow, yeah, that's crazy. Flashback otherworldly. I don't think we need this land still. Whisper Agent, probably what we want on top. We'll hold Whisper, let them kind of try to waste their Scalding Cauldron. I think this is just a little safer. Yeah, I'd rather just play. I'm going to play out a big creature here. I think we have enough in the tank that we can come back from a mass board wipe. Oof. Getting got by Return of Nature feels extra bad. The Flyers are what's going to get us the game win, potentially, against the Sandworm, so that's kind of what I'm valuing here. 2 hits in with the token feels pretty good, though. Yeah, carry added's not going to do much here. Nice. That's actually kind of a big win for us. Let's start with combat. Okay. There's the sandworm again. It's a fairy one time. I mean, that sounds ridiculous when I happened the last one, right? I don't think we have any other removal, though. I just don't, so, you know. We'll see. Something that I can... It's not a land is a good place to start. Crashing Tide works. Might be a removal spell here. Nope. Trying to get around the sandworm as best we can. Opponent electing to go to 1 life here? What could that mean? Really? Is there a world I don't play Capuchin? I don't... Yeah, I was going to say, I think I... Let me explain myself a little bit here. Just real quick. I don't think I play Danitha. The reason is if they have a board wipe, then I still have Danitha as my follow-up. If they just play Sandworm, I still get around the Sandworm, right? They go block, block, I have it in the air. If they have a flying blocker to play, I have still 2 creatures for their 1 ground blocker, so I think I'm in okay shape. The fact they didn't block there is very strange. Like, they could have just chumped here and then taken, they would have taken 5. But that's a little strange. But managed to pull that one out. And we are back with our final, for real this time, the actual third of the Chaos drafts here for everybody. I want to thank you all so much for hanging out with me. Hopefully this helps you. Again, not just in this Chaos, I just wanted to lay down some principles of these Chaos formats. We're on the draw with a really dicey one. Wow. Yeah, so really dicey hand. I think we keep it, but it could kind of screw us, but I think we keep it. We just need a blue source, and we can resculpt if they put down a major threat. We have Courser on 3 no matter what. I was going to say the worst draw on our deck's Plains, but I did want to just lay down some principles of this particular format. Whether it's the sealed that you're doing on MTG Arena, whether it's a cash draft you're doing on MTGO, or just something with your friends or your LGS, it is a blast to play Chaos. It's a ton of fun. It's a cool format. It's just a good time all around, and I just want to highlight that the principles of the format are really what make it. You got to just draft, oh my god, okay. Drafting on a good curve. Drafting principles of Magic, flying being good, big creatures, and we've seen black-green in every single match, right? That's 2 colors that really typify the principles of Magic. Big creatures can win games. We're seeing big creatures. Big creatures can win games in this format. I mean, this holds back a Temple Thief, I guess. Big creatures win. Evasion wins. That's kind of the principles of this format. And I think we're about to get completely slaughtered by our opponent here, who's playing just the absolute sick nuts. You see the curve out, just perfect. And unfortunately, we didn't draw blue. So, yeah, that'll do it for that third one. So, and again, principles of the format. just a nice, simple curve. I will note that opponent 3-colored natural without a huge problem. So that's a little frustrating. But that is part of Magic. And that's the thing about the Chaos games, is sometimes you're just winning. But again, you're never not winning without following the principles of Magic. That was just a good curve. We stumbled a little bit. Not a ton. I don't think we would have done a bunch without. Yeah, like there, like if we had drawn blue, we could have held up Resculpt. This is a little bit better than what we've been looking at. We could have held up Resculpt and like resculpted Tristani. And then we could have blocked and traded with a Temple creature and still taken like 6. I don't think we were winning that game, even if we had blue source. Then it would be like play Teferi like naked and then lose. Like it's just a losing proposition all around. It happens though. I don't know if we want to gaze immediately. We probably wait for a draw step. I don't think we need to do it right away. We want to get as much information as we can. I think all 3 of these are fine. I think we'll take Sky Marcher, then Land, then Theorist. Just mana efficiency here with the Sky Marcher. I forgot we had the island in the hand. We should have probably just taken Theorist, but we can still be pretty mana efficient here. We can do some cool tricks with the Starnheim Courser. This is an enchantment, so it does cost 1 less, no matter at what point we cast it. So if they try to burn out our Starnheim Courser, we can save it with Sentinel's Mark. Rixmati Reveler enters the battlefield, discard a card, then draw a card. The spectacle cost was not paid, so they're going to draw a card and discard a card. Make your mark. And this is the cool thing we get to do with Sentinel's Mark. Yep. Some very fast ones there in the last home stretch of the video here. But you can see, just good principles of Magic. Evasive creatures, our opponent not able to keep up with the amount of tempo we had on board with our flying creatures. So it's just kind of how Magic works sometimes. We saw our opponent curve out against us and do pretty well against us because they curved out very cleanly. So definitely a really cool format. I just don't want everybody to think that it's like when you're drafting or sealing in set where you can lean on synergies to help you get through. You often cannot. Again, once in a while you can do so, but for the most part, you really have to apply the principles of Magic overall. Big creatures, recursion. We saw green-black in just about every single opponent. Maybe not that last one, because they were on mono-green, perhaps? No, they were red-green. Good principles of Magic. Big creatures. Evasive creatures. Card advantage. These are ways you win games of Limited. These are ways you win games of Magic and have since Magic was a thing. So you want to make sure you really apply those to the Chaos, in the Chaos formats, the Chaos Limited formats, because it really does help. And it can feel a little sometimes like, oh, they got a bigger bomb. But we saw a lot of times it wasn't necessarily a bomb that was winning the games. It was just simply good curve, evasion, simple things, good removal, very simple core principles of Magic that were winning these games. So I think it really exemplifies the point of something like a Chaos format in general. So I hope you can take these principles of Chaos, and apply them to the next time you get to do it. And definitely try if you get a chance to. They're a ton of fun, and you can really do well if you work on good Magic principles. Deck building on a good curve, having a good creature count, good removal, having a theme, evasion, big creatures, recursion. Just keep it clean, keep it fun, enjoy yourselves, and certainly until next time, you gotta cast more spells. Do it!